It's no secret that Tumblr is a weird place, home to a wide variety of strange phenomenon. Sharpies, ball pits, kickstarters, and more. But one Tumblr phenomenon has stood the test of time, becoming both a staple on the website and a source of mockery from outsiders. The phenomenon of teens and tweens fawning over fictional white men to the point of obsession, launching the characters into fame, or rather infamy. Why does this occur? How did it begin? And most importantly, what is a Tumblr sexy man? Let's dive in. I mean, how bad could I be? I mean, how bad could it be? My mistake. Before we get into the video, I'd like to give a massive thank you to today's sponsor, Wingfox. Wingfox is an online learning platform where you can take courses in digital painting, animation, special effects, filmmaking, graphic design, and more, all taught by industry experts and veterans. Wingfox recently added a brand new course to their lineup called Cyberpunk Art and Drawing. This course has been super popular not only because it's a fantastic course, but because it's taught by the legendary Park Jun-kyu. Park has worked as an illustrator for Cyberpunk 2077, League of Legends, and has also worked with Capcom on a Resident Evil project. His art is so incredibly beautiful and he just has such a unique and captivating style. You'll learn drawing basics like how to use reference and plan out your composition, as well as more complex skills like how to draw machinery and cyberpunk style accessories and weapons. This course is super cool and you can get a huge discount by clicking my affiliate link in the description. If you want to take another course on the website, that's totally fine and you can use my discount code WFH15. Once again, that's WFH15 for 15% off any course. Thank you so much to Wingfox for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on with the history of Tumblr sexy men. Now, I realize that this video is going to be basically unintelligible to anyone who wasn't on Tumblr in the mid-2010s, but I formatted this video and scripted it in a way that hopefully anyone can understand. Let's start with the basic definition. Tumblr sexy man is a phrase used to describe any number of characters that have reached viral Tumblr fame due to their alleged attractiveness. These characters are often drawn as skinny white anime boys dressed in formal wear, and more often than not, they're evil or at least have a dark side. These characters include, but aren't limited to, the OnceLer from the Lorax, Sans from Undertale, Raymond from Animal Crossing, and Jeff the Killer. To fully understand the Tumblr sexy man trope, however, we need to first go back to its roots. Fictional crushes have been a thing since fiction was invented. I mean, hell, I'm sure back in the 1920s there were plenty of people who had crushes on Nosferatu and Jay Gatsby, and in that respect, not much has changed. Admit it, you've developed a crush on at least one fictional animated character, whether it be Shigo, Flynn Rider, Kronk, Human Shrek, Li Shang, or even the furry Robin Hood. Hey, I'm not judging. My point is, having a crush on a fictional character, whether animated or live action, isn't that weird and in fact is pretty common. But as I've said before on this channel, and I'm sure we'll say again, Tumblr always manages to take things that one step further. See, Tumblr basically revolves around fandom, and with a large fan base comes a surge of obsessive fans who are infatuated with the characters. Since the early days of Tumblr, teens have been making blogs dedicated to how much they love characters from their favorite shows and how much they want to have their babies, which yes, is always uncomfortable because the teens in question are usually like 14 years old. Like, how about you stop kinning Kamida and start kinning your homework? The phenomenon of skinny white anime boys from cartoons becoming Tumblr's obsession began in 2012, but the ironic phrase Tumblr sexy man wouldn't be coined until around 2013 to 2014. By this point, the trend was way too widespread and prevalent not to notice and comment on, and thus it was given a name and became a meme. It's really hard to pinpoint the original post that coined this phrase, and it seems like it might actually be lost to time. A Tumblr blog called Sickly White Dudes was created and began compiling and collecting information on the phenomenon as it was occurring. This blog compiled all of the information into a Google document, which would later become the Sexypedia wiki page. In this way, they were kind of the pioneers of Tumblr sexy man, having archived and documented a lot of early information on the trope and the fandom surrounding it. The rules and definitions for what constitutes a Tumblr sexy man are very loose and blurred, and there's a lot of discourse around who and who doesn't count as a TSM. I don't know why I tried to abbreviate it. We'll discuss this more in depth later in the video, but for now the best thing to do is to just show you some examples. So let's move on to While there are hundreds of characters which supposedly fall under this label, few have actually earned it. To help you understand the trope, I've collected 5 of the most prominent and influential Tumblr Sexymen from the past decade. Keep in mind that there are many other characters who fit under this label, but I've specifically picked these 5 because they're the most popular or interesting examples. So let's get started. I mentioned before that the phenomenon started in 2012. Well, it was started by one particular character, a character so bizarre and unexpected and wildly popular that his mere existence would change Tumblr and fandom culture and even the internet forever. And that character is... Yes, you heard correctly, the OnceLer from the Lorax. The concept of the OnceLer as a hot Tumblr bad boy is pretty widely accepted now, but when this character first emerged as Tumblr's biggest obsession, it was bizarre. The Lorax by Dr. Seuss was an unassuming kids book with a wholesome moral, but the movie adaptation was weird. The Lorax came out in theaters early 2012 and took the once faceless and mysterious OnceLer character and turned him into... this. He was now a skinny Tumblr soft boy with a tragic backstory and an evil side, as well as a top hat and suit. All of these traits would go on to become Tumblr Sexyman staples. Also note that none of this was in the source material, and the decision to adapt his character this way was frankly a bizarre choice which would lead to years of non-stop sexy OnceLer fan art, roleplays, fanfiction, and most popular of all, shipping. See, in the universe of the Lorax, there wasn't really anyone to ship the OnceLer with, unless you were brave enough to ship him with the Lorax himself, which not many people were. Boo. So instead of shipping the OnceLer with other people, they multiplied him and shipped him with himself. In the fandom, there were tons of different versions of the OnceLer, from female OnceLer to hipster OnceLer to evil OnceLer, and they were all shipped with each other. That was a real thing that happened, and Tumblr users even had discourse over whether it was problematic to ship someone with themselves. Once again, I'm not kidding. Or should I say OnceLer again? I shouldn't. Sarah Z has a really great video on the OnceLer fandom, so if you want a more in-depth look specifically at this character, definitely go check that out. But for now, all you need to know is that Tumblr's sudden violent obsession with the OnceLer would go on to spark the Tumblr Sexyman phenomenon, as many of Tumblr's favorite characters for years to come would fit into the OnceLer's blueprint. We'll examine that blueprint later, but for now, let's move on to... Bill Cipher is an antagonist from the animated kids cartoon series Gravity Falls. He began to amass Tumblr popularity around 2013, shortly after the OnceLer fandom was established. You're probably wondering how on earth Tumblr managed to turn this into a sexy man. Well, humanization, of course. Tumblr users took Bill's character design and used elements from it to make him into a skinny white dude in a top hat and suit. Sound familiar? This is an interesting case because it showed just how little a character had to originally share with the OnceLer to then be adapted by Tumblr users into a OnceLer clone. Aside from having a top hat and being evil, Bill didn't share that many traits with the OnceLer, but Tumblr took it into their own hands to give him a full suit, skinny frame, white complexion, and that classic one eyebrow raised smug grin thing that all of these dudes seem to have. Bill Cipher's sexy man design was so widely spread and accepted as canon that the creator of Gravity Falls purposely drew a very grotesque canon design in rebellion against the fanbase. The fans obviously ignored this version in favor of the twink one though. Bill Cipher was the second ever Tumblr sexy man, putting him in a very unique position. He borrowed many key elements from the OnceLer, but his own edgy traits would be added to the list of tropes for the sexy man archetype. For example, his canon design being something inhuman or inanimate which was then humanized, or his affiliation with demons and magic. Overall, while he would pass on some of his traits to future Tumblr Sexymen, he absolutely solidified the villainous evil persona and suit and bow tie combo as a must-have for any wannabe Tumblr heartthrob. Moving on to... Tony the Talking Clock was a character from the YouTube web series Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. The series was a collection of short horror videos published to YouTube depicting a bunch of puppets going through violent or disturbing situations in the format of a kids TV show. It was basically a Happy Tree Friends-esque parody of kids television, and it got massively popular for both its shock factor and super cool production quality. Tony the Talking Clock was the antagonist in the second episode of the series, teaching the main characters a fun-filled lesson about the concept of time before turning evil and killing them. Tony rose to prominence as a Tumblr sexy man shortly after Bill Cipher in 2013 and ticked off all of the boxes. Non-human character turned into a skinny white boy? Tick. Suit and bow tie? Tick. Evil personality? tick. A pattern was beginning to form, and the traits of the Tumblr Sexyman archetype were being solidified with every new popular character. It's really funny to me how this character design is the furthest thing away from like a hot brooding anime boy, and yet somehow Tumblr artists managed to turn all of his clock features into like cool face paint and dyed hair. Character designers work hard, but teens on Tumblr who want to make every character bangable work harder. Tony's rise to Tumblr fame after the OnceLer and Bill Cipher makes another pattern very clear. These characters were coming from extremely bizarre franchises. Tumblr users thirsting over hot fictional guys is to be expected, but thirsting over characters from the Lorax movie or a puppet-based YouTube web series was not expected at all. Time and time again, Tumblr users chose the most obscure, unsexy, and straight up wacky franchises and characters to sexify, baffling everyone who watched the trope rise to prominence. By this point, the term itself had become popular both unironically and as a meme, but it would reach the full height of its popularity with the character. If you're an internet user, I probably don't have to tell you what Undertale is or why it was so popular, but I'm going to anyway. Undertale is a video game published by game developer Toby Fox in 2015. The game is a top-down RPG and has been widely acclaimed for its characters, writing, gameplay, art. I mean, what hasn't this game been acclaimed for? Naturally, good games attract large fan bases, and attract a large fan base it certainly did. The Undertale fan base is probably one of the largest and most prolific out there, with tons of artwork, music, writing, shipping, and of course thirsting. Fans were hot for basically every character in this game, but only one would reach true Sexyman status. That character is Sans, and he was one of the first and only Tumblr Sexymen to break almost all of the typical tropes. It's hard to describe just how popular Sans was on Tumblr around this time unless you were there, but basically you couldn't scroll 2 seconds without seeing him on your dashboard even if you weren't interested in Undertale. It's hard to pin down exactly why so many people were thirsting over a pixelated skeleton, but I can take a guess. People loved Sans because he was a funny little skeleton guy who made puns, but he also had a super evil, powerful boss fight. In the game, it was a very dramatic story moment, but of course in the fandom this translated into having a twisted and evil dark side. Like many Tumblr Sexymen before him, this evil side played a key part in his sex appeal, but unlike the characters before him, he didn't fit into the OnceLer blueprint. Sans was one of the first and only characters that wasn't humanized into a skinny white anime boy, but instead depicted pretty true to his character as a short, chubby, slobby skeleton guy. This broke all of the rules for what constituted a Tumblr Sexyman, and yet he is still widely regarded as one of, if not the most popular characters on Tumblr. This poses an interesting question. What makes a Tumblr Sexyman? Is it about popularity, appearance, how many tropes the character ticks off? Well, this question is complicated and we'll get to answering it soon. We're nearly at the end of our lineup, so let's move on to our last example. Hesbin Hotel is an animated web series on YouTube created by Vivian Medrano and Spindlehorse Toons. The series skyrocketed to popularity in 2019, even being picked up as a series by A24 of all studios. The adult dark comedy musical series focuses on a group of demons in hell who try to become rehabilitated so they can go to heaven. The sexy man in question is a character called Alistair the Radio Demon. You know the drill by this point. Tall, skinny, bow tie, suit, sharp teeth, magical eyes, non-human, edgy and evil and powerful, etc. etc. What makes Alistair interesting is the meta conversation that surrounds his very existence. Is Alistair the Radio Demon bait? He fits into every single trope laid out by the characters that came before him almost to a T. From the Sexypedia wiki, quote, "He is infamous for looking like he was specifically designed to bait the Sexyman fandom and then actually getting it." Alistair actually wasn't the first Tumblr Sexyman to be accused of being bait. Black Hat, a character from the animated web series Villainous, has also been noted as fitting a little too perfectly into the trope, to the point where many are convinced he's either bait or parody. If this is true, then Alistair and Black Hat may symbolize the next evolution in the trope's timeline. The post-ironic Tumblr Sexyman. Pretty much all things online go from being wildly popular to incredibly cringe to ironically dissected to unironically fun again. For example, the Twilight movies. The Tumblr Sexyman trope may be in its ironic stage, with creators becoming very self-aware about the archetypes that their characters are falling under. Basically, lots of people think that Alistair and Black Hat are either parodies of this trope or purposely designed to fit this trope. Either way, it signals a shift from random, unassuming characters being adapted to fit the OnceLer blueprint to characters characters being specifically manufactured and created to be Tumblr Sexymen. Overall, Alistair is interesting because he shows us what a modern day Tumblr Sexyman looks like. Personally, I thought the trope had died out in like 2015, but Alistair's popularity shows us that this trope is still going strong even if it has evolved a bit with the modern times. It's interesting to look back at the roots of this phrase and where it started to how it changed along the way and how it's eventually ended up. Like all things online, it has slowly evolved with its audience and the changing of the times in a weird but fascinating way. Let's revisit that Sexypedia wiki that I mentioned earlier. The wiki's goal is to document all of the characters who have been deemed Tumblr Sexymen as well as all the tropes and traits that they share. It's caused a lot of discourse due to its huge character list containing many characters who arguably don't belong there at all. Handsome Jack from Borderlands? Well, he fits all the tropes, but he's not popular enough. Scar from The Lion King? I mean, I guess a lot of people had a crush on him and he is an edgy evil bad boy, but he's not Tumblr enough. Dr. Bunsen Honeydew from The Muppets? Well, he's an unexpected character from a very non-sexy franchise which falls in line with the other characters from the trope, but no, he definitely doesn't fit. So we have to ask the question, what makes a Tumblr Sexyman? What separates Sans from Scar? Why does Alistair count while Handsome Jack doesn't? I'm far from the first person to ask these questions, and Tumblr users have been discoursing about it for years. A Tumblr user called Zelda Softy wrote on the topic, Tumblr Sexyman has lost its meaning. People see something popular and instantly think, yeah, there's gonna be a new Sexyman. That's not how it works. You can't just make a character into a sexy man in a week. If there isn't at least 20 blogs dedicated to that character and pics of them with captions like, ah, my ovaries, then it isn't a sexy man. It takes effort. Another user called Teams Nice wrote, basically people see a character be drawn in a fun, cool way and go, ah yes, sexy man, without thinking about what actually makes a character a sexy man. It has genuinely nothing to do with the characters themselves. Sans and the OnceLer are incredibly different characters and yet they're widely regarded as the most prominent examples of this phenomenon, and these posts can provide us with a lot of insight into the topic. They point out that it isn't just appearance or popularity or really anything about the characters themselves, but more about how the fandom and Tumblr interact with them. You can't just slap the label onto any character you like, there has to be a perfect storm of insane fan obsession to elevate a character to this level. To conclude this section of the video, I'm going to attempt the impossible and define this trope once and for all. I've compiled a list of 10 traits/tropes that these characters usually have. They don't have to have all of them, but they should at least have a few. This is pretty subjective and these aren't hard and fast rules, but this is just my personal list. Let's go. Number 1, and most important of all, the character must be popular. There's no leeway here, the character has to at least have like 1,000 pieces of fan art. There's gotta be ask vlogs, roleplays, fanfictions, Pinterest boards, all dedicated to this one character. Number 2, the character is evil. They might be a remorseless and sadistic villain, or they may just have a dark side/alter ego. Either way, they're a twisted fucking psychopath. Number 3, the character is a skinny white anime boy. Despite being the most powerful being in the universe, he looks like a stiff wind would blow him over. Number 4, the character is non-human. This might be a humanoid monster or demon situation like with Sans or Alistair, or it could be an object or animal humanized into an anime boy, a la Raymond from Animal Crossing, Tony the Talking Clock, or Bill Cipher. Number 5, the character dresses in a dapper and formal fashion, usually a suit but can also be business casual. Bonus points if they have a cane, top hat, bow tie, glasses, or monocle. Number 6, the character is extremely powerful. This is usually expressed through magic and can range from simply having magic abilities like Sans to literally having godlike world-ending powers like Alistair or Bill Cipher. Number 7, the character has monster traits while still being humanoid. Alistair's horns, Sans' glowing eyes, Black Cat's sharp teeth, Michael Afton's purple skin tone, and so on. Number 8, the main reason for their popularity is their supposed sex appeal. Even if the character is really deep, nuanced, or complex in the source material, the discussion around them will be about how attractive, cute, or sexy they are. Number 9, the characters will have a ton of popular AUs. The OnceLer and Sans are prime examples of this because each of them have hundreds of alternate universe designs. Bonus points if the fandom frequently ships these AUs together. And lastly, number 10, they eventually become hated. If your dashboard is filled with nothing but Sans Undertale for months on end, it's only natural that you're going to start hating him with a burning passion. Whether it's because of oversaturation, witnessing weird, outrageous fandom behavior, or personal belief that the character in question is problematic, people will eventually find reasons to dislike Tumblr Sexymen. So what have we learned today? Well, the Tumblr Sexyman is hard to define but easy to spot. It was incredibly influential both as a genuine character archetype and as a meme, and it does have its problematic elements. It's interesting to see how it started as a simple phrase to describe a few select characters and evolved into a heavily debated and controversial character trope. It's easy to be judgmental about how weird it is that Tumblr users wanted to bang a clock or a pyramid, but you know, it's normal for teens and even adults to like weird cringy stuff, and as long as it isn't illegal or hurting anyone, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's also worth examining this phenomenon for its more problematic elements. Tumblr user Year 2000 Electronics wrote in a post, quote, "The original Sexymen weren't just characters that a lot of people find hot. They weren't just, oh, you draw this character hotter than they should be either. The idea of a Tumblr man was a sentiment geared towards mostly straight women who would ignore female characters, characters of color, anything like that in favor of a rampant latching onto average or even wicked male characters. It wasn't a conversation about shaming straight women or anyone who was attracted to these people, but rather a think piece. Why are your favorite characters always men? Why do you feel the need to be attracted to something, to ship something in media? Is it not enough to simply have a poignant theme? This argument has been lost to time. The Tumblr Sexyman trope is seen largely as a meme nowadays, and it's easy to forget how legitimately earnest it was in the beginning. People weren't drawing anime boy out of the OnceLer for the meme, they were genuinely infatuated with him. The trope is funny and silly, but you really do have to ask yourself why time and time again Tumblr was choosing to popularize the same attractive skinny white dudes to the point where other more diverse characters were being completely ignored. Also note that in almost all cases any hint of nuance or commentary that the character represented in the source material was thrown out the window, which can be kinda problematic in and of itself. Like, all the character needed to be was evil and sexy and the source material didn't matter. You could just give him a sad backstory and then you wouldn't have to worry about the ethics of drawing soft boy art of an evil capitalist who wiped out an entire native species. It's always worth examining these kinds of criticisms because they're absolutely valid, but on the other hand, we've come a long way. A lot of people forget just how big Tumblr Sexymen were in the mid-2010s, and while the trope is still around today, it's far less prevalent than it once was. Personally, these days I see a lot more fan culture devoted to unique and diverse characters, and I hope that that's a trend that continues. For now though, Tumblr Sexymen are far from extinct, and who knows which character will be chosen as Tumblr's next target. No one is safe. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that video. I know it's a little bit different than the stuff I usually do. This was more of an analysis of, I guess, fan culture and stuff like that, but I found it really interesting and I hope I can do more stuff like this in the future. So yeah, definitely let me know if you enjoyed it, and yeah, thank you so much for supporting me. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Thank you so much to my Garfield gods over on Patreon: Reimport, Sheriff Whiskey, Bree, Soap Tears, Princess Bossy Boots, Jason Salisbury, Fabulously Terrible, Cass Lomas, Jelly Kai, Astrium Vortex, Iris Eos, DeGaulle, Pound Town Town, Tyson, Marlowe, Tristan, Bipper, Destroyer of Worlds, The Black Banana, Your Boy TRZ, Erin, J-Poop, Sophie Skidder, Losers Club, Player TSD, Ashley Jade, Sarah, Dance and Ragdolls Comics, Aiden McFan, The Bonesaw, Sobbing, Red Meth, Curb My Anxiety, Rodney Ogg, Juicy, Troy Oblivion, Natalie, I'm Half Gyro Half Man, The $6.99 Man, Matthew Wahlberg, Essene, Avery, Albert BG, Rudy Redgrave, Tom McKinnon, Tainted Latte, Grand Beasley, Gabby, Brim Kitty, Goodalol, Elise, Chelsea Levesque, Henry L, Jesse Chisholm, X17 Chan, Simon Renshaw, Model Freak, Dr. Hot Dogs, Mr. Korth, Maxwell Bartholomew, Rook Jupiter, Maya, Joe in Cold Blood, Fiverr, The Furby Librarian, Lewis, Gunnerstrip 7, Cloudy ATM, Root, Mouse, Chamberham, Holly Nicole, Eric Lera, Sneakerwiz, Casey Har Megado, Arcantilus, Joe Bradshaw, Alexander the Late, Soapwood, Moogs, Hyperdeath Kisses, Berkeley, Ash, DJ Lemonheater, Eric C, Durzo Blint, Minty Lasagna, Karina Froge, Mira Sanders, Ariella, Icehammer 82, Kobayashi Maru, Lord Huge Knot is playing Maple Story, Existential Ho, Dennis Landry, Kaylee and Bailey, Adrian D, Worm, Kendall Pachalik, Peppermint Cams, Yukiko Best Girl, Right Camille, Gnome Piss, The Tate, Frank 1982, Powell Kid Ziora, Mr. D Fish 6, Arctic Mirror, Felix Moller, Grep Gunderson, Death 2, Gorster, David Atkinson, Etheria E, Quinn the Jester, Daniel Pernama, Andy Pitcher, and Rachel H. Thank you all so much for being my patrons. I love you guys, and if you want to join them, head over to my Patreon. The link will be in the description. Thanks for watching. Bye.